It's Nito here, and welcome back. So I want to talk about the build that I've been playing in 0.3 of PoE2. It is, in fact, a warrior, and warrior has been kind of amazing so far. I know a lot of people were pretty doomer about it being bad with the changes, and there's been a lot of nerfs and stuff, but this build in particular has been fantastic. And I'm actually playing a quarterstaff Titan, currently level 69. And I just made it to maps, so I just finished the campaign. So we are using Earthbreaker for Aftershocks, and Ancestral Empowerment, and then our main skill is Vaulting Impact. So this is basically like the leap slam of quarterstaffs, right? So it moves you, and then as you can see, I am using the Crater support, which creates 3 fissures on landing. And then the fissures deal damage 35% of your default attack damage, which I believe is just referring to this. So it's 35% of 257%. And they convert damage to fire. You can have up to 9 fissures. And then we also use the branching fissure support to make each of those branch out 2 extra times. And then we are using Aftershock support to get even more Aftershocks, so we have 35% from there, we have 25% from our Ascendancy, and then there's one new node on the tree here that gives you 5% chance for slam skills to cause Aftershocks. So we have 65% chance of Aftershocks, and the Aftershock is going to re-trigger all of the fissures. So, see that extra explosion, and then all the fissures trigger again. So why Vaulting Impact? So this skill got an interesting buff this league where it, instead of consuming days to stun more, now it causes Broken Stance, which stores 5% of the pre-mitigation physical hit damage, and then it inflicts that 5% on any subsequent attack hit. So that's going to include the craters, the fissure hits, and also the aftershocks as well. So basically we are causing daze with Wind Blast, which just dazes on hit. Daze, if you don't know, now is just automatically applied. You used to have to build up to it, and it just causes 50% more stun buildup. So Wind Blast is insanely good for stunning things because it has a built-in 150% more stun buildup, and then it also has dazes on hit for another 50% more. And then we also use like stun support for 70% more. And then I'm also giving it Impale, which is going to make it so that a portion, I believe 30% of the fizz damage from the Wind Blast is going to be stored on the enemy, and then the next hit is going to consume that and have that fizz damage added to it. So we consume it with Vaulting Impact, which is going to cause the fizz hit from this to be bigger, which is then going to cause the Broken Stance 5% damage to do even more damage. So that's the general idea. And then the last support we use is Fist of War 3, which is actually kind of interesting because it has a 14-second cooldown on the Ancestral Boost, but the Ancestral Boost effect is doubled. So Ancestral Boost does 30% more damage and 25% increased AoE. So since it's doubled, it's 60% more and 50% increased damage, or 50% increased AoE, rather. But the interesting thing is you can bypass that 14-second cooldown by being a Titan, because this node here just says every second slam you use is ancestrally boosted. So that's going to bypass the cooldown, but still give you the double effect. So you get all that extra AoE and all of that extra damage every other slam. And that's what the green spike stuff is. That's the, like, new, it's not an MTX or anything, that's just what ancestrally boosting a slam looks like now. So I'm going to jump into a map and kind of show you what it looks like. Obviously, I literally just started mapping, so I'm only in tier 1 maps. But let's do it, let's see how it looks. So you start out by doing some Wind Blasts on the enemy, and then you can use your 2 War Cries So we have Seismic Cry and Infernal Cry. So Infernal Cry just adds some extra damage as extra fire, and then Seismic Cry causes additional aftershocks. And then those are both going to be on our weapon swap, which I'll explain in a sec. So our weapon swap has the Red Blade banner in it, which causes enemies in your presence to count as having double power, which is going to be giving you additional empowered attacks for your War Cries. And then also on my tree, I have a bunch of extra like damage with empowered attacks and stuff like that. I'll go over the tree after the map. Boss. So you'll see the boss gets stunned very quickly with Wind Blast. And then also when we stun him, we fully break his armor. And then we also have the Ancestral Cry ability here, which is kind of just okay for this setup. I think because it fully converts you to fire damage, it means that your like Broken Days effect doesn't work anymore, but it does also trigger the ground effects a lot more anyways, so it's still a damage boost, but it's kind of inconsistent. Alright, so that's what the build looks like and plays like. So just to go over some of the gear, this is basically all entirely self-found or self-crafted gear, except for a couple of the uniques. So these are like 1 Exalt uniques, so super cheap. These gloves basically make it so strength can satisfy all your attribute requirements for melee weapons and melee skills, so we don't need dex or int investment for our quarterstaff or our quarterstaff skills. So we can just go pure strength and then pure armor and all that. So these are kind of build enabling. It is definitely still possible to just like get enough dex and int. It's not actually that hard anymore because they did lower the attribute requirements and stuff. But I still think the gloves are pretty good, especially just while you're leveling and all that, because it just makes your life a lot easier. And then also the Red Blade Banner. And then I don't know if this thing even works, but it says causes double stun buildup. I don't know if that's only on hits with the weapon or if it does work for Seismic Cry hits, because Seismic Cry has its own hit and can stun enemies. But yeah, I just use that in the main hand. I don't ever actually attack with this thing. And then the Quarterstaff is one that I made myself from a white item, actually. So I just like use some of the new crafting currency, hit a nice fizz damage roll, or a flat fizz roll, and then just crafted it up from there. Turned out okay. And, you know, armor, we just have some, like, armor ES hybrid right now. It's kind of just, like, whatever I was able to find during the campaign. It's nothing special. Ideally, you probably want pure armor base, because I'm not really scaling evasion very much. Mostly armor. Currently only have a little over 3,000 armor, which is not a whole lot, but working on getting more. And then, yeah, it's kind of just like life and res on most of the other pieces of gear. A little bit of leech on this ring, which is nice, because we do a lot of physical damage, so leech is pretty important for staying alive. Just a bunch of res and flat fizz. Decent belt, actually, that I crafted with the Abyssal... I think I used the Abyssal Essence on this, and then was able to hit this like Cold Chaos res mod, which is pretty cool. And then just some boots with a little bit of res, and then some of that armor applies to LE damage. We don't really have enough armor or enough of that stat to make this very valuable yet, but I'm working on that. So, gear is really nothing special. Yeah, I haven't really invested very much into this character yet. but I definitely plan on taking it further. And then, like I said, we have Aftershocks and the Ancestral Boost nodes from our Ascendancy currently. Haven't done the 3rd or 4th Ascendancies yet, but I think we'll probably... Maybe late game you go for Hulking Form, but then until then we probably go maybe Crushing Impact, Surprising Strength, or maybe Stone Skin, if I can get a decently high armor, body armor. I haven't quite decided yet. I'm not sure exactly what the best option is, so I'm going to be experimenting a bit with that. The tree is pretty straightforward. It kind of looks like most other melee trees starting out. You just get the melee damage. Here, you get the skill speed there. Come down here, you get the two-handed weapon stuff. And then, in our weapon swap, we have all of this empowered attack, Warcry speed, Warcry cooldown stuff. You want to get this one as soon as possible with your Warcry because it gives you an extra empowered attack. And then we also come all the way over here. We get more Warcry cooldown and damage for each time you've Warcried recently. We get Warcries debilitate enemies, which just makes them deal reduced damage and slows them down a bit. And then we come over here for empowered attacks, gain 15% fizz damage with extra fire. So all of that is really nice for our Warcries, and it makes us able to have like a really big hit with our vaulting impact. And then obviously that then translates to bigger broken days effect as well. Then we come down here, we got lots of like increased area of effect, increased attack damage, and then aftershocks, because we have so many aftershocks, we get extra AoE for those. Over here we have more aftershock chance and also 3% max life, which is kind of nice. We have Shattering Blow, which gives break 50% of armor on heavy stunning an enemy, and then we have up another like 100% increased armor broken here, which is going to break 100% of armor on heavy stunning an enemy. So as soon as we heavy stun stuff, it's always fully armor broken. And then we also have this node was actually buffed quite a bit. So it used to be 20% max life recovered when you heavy stun a rare or unique. Now it's 50%, which is kind of nice. Hits can be evaded by heavy stun targets. This isn't super necessary anymore. I don't have Resolute Technique because they changed it, and it now doubles your accuracy instead of making you unable to miss, but you also don't really need it anymore for melee builds. So if you look at our accuracy, we're like 100% chance, 97 at 5 meters, which is like, I don't know, like not too far away, but like, yeah, we have good accuracy without really needing to invest much into it. I do use Precision, which gives 30% increased accuracy for 10 spirit. And then other than that, I have like this node, and then like a little bit of dexterity, and like that's all the accuracy I have currently, and we're still more or less 100% accuracy. So yeah, you really don't need to invest much into accuracy for melee builds anymore, although, with the fissures and stuff shooting out to the edge of the screen, maybe those have a slightly lower chance of hitting, but it's not that big a deal. Generally, you're jumping directly on top of the boss or whatever when you're trying to do single target damage, so you probably aren't going to miss them. And then, yeah, we have Rage Generation right here, which is pretty nice. We have a little bit of attack speed. We have Armor Evasion, defend with 150% of armor against enemies that are further than 6 meters away, which is pretty good. This node right here is probably my new favorite node on the warrior tree. Just gives you a bunch of attack speed if you've been hit recently, and also reduces the potency of slowing on you. And you get even more reduced slow from these guys. So that's actually super important for melee builds, because there's a lot of slowing effects that like are honestly extremely overtuned. They will slow you by like 50%. And it just makes the game feel terrible to play if you don't have reduced effective slows. So that cluster is really nice. And then also down here we have even more, and then momentum reduces, or it makes you ignore all the movement penalties from armor. Since we are armor based, armor, like pure armor bases have a higher reduced movement speed penalty. So that helps a lot. I'll probably end up also taking the immune to hinder and maim, because that's also really nice, just to like eliminate a bunch of slowing effects that you don't have to worry about anymore. And then the plan is to kind of come down through here, maybe pick up some of these nodes for the AoE and stuff. Come down to this node is very good if you can get a high armor pair of gloves, and then you get a bunch of evasion from that, and then you can convert all your evasion to armor with iron reflexes, so I might try to do that. Also, these nodes over here are quite good now, particularly this one, because it's giving you immunity to chill, ignite, or shock. Probably ignite on this build, because we have mostly red support gems, but even, yeah, like ignites can be, they can do a lot of damage, so that's actually pretty nice to have. And then same here, we can get 5% max life as well, which is also really nice, so probably will come down there and pick up those. And I will probably come over here and get some of the armor applies to Ellie and some extra armor, because, you know, we're not a block build, because obviously we don't have a shield, so like it's pretty hard to get defenses from anything other than armor, pretty much. So we have to just like invest heavily into armor. So I'll probably end up taking Prism Guard as well. And then, yeah, eventually I'll probably take either this or Hulking Form to get just a bunch of extra armor, and then hopefully we can get a high enough armor value where it actually matters in the end game. Because armor is one of those things where it's kind of like, if you don't have enough of it, it does like basically nothing. So yeah, that's kind of where the build's at currently. We are like about to hit level 70, and hopefully the build continues to go pretty well, and continues to get stronger. So I will be making some more update videos, I'm sure, at some point as I get further into endgame, but this is the day one look at the build currently, and I'm loving it. It's good. It's really good. So just to go over the gems. So Vaulting Impact, Aftershock. Oh yeah, also one thing about Vaulting Impact. Attack damage 343 versus Dazed 403. So it actually does like 20% more damage versus Dazed, which wasn't in the patch notes. So the skill is actually much better than it seems as long as you're dazing enemies. The other thing is that it says cannot inflict daze, but the crater, the fissures themselves can inflict daze. So if you have a chance to daze, like there's some nodes over here that give you daze chance, so like 10% chance to daze on hit. I'll probably anoint Stupefy, I think. Maybe dizzying hits. I'm not sure if I'm going to get much crit chance or not yet. But yeah, probably Stupefy, because it's just 10% daze chance, and then 40% damage versus daze, which is just really solid. You could also do one with the river, which is another 10% daze, and then also 30% increased defenses, which is kind of nice, and then also 30% stun buildup. That's another good annoyant. So yeah, one of those. I guess you could do this for like Fizz's extra lightning to get some like shock chance, but it's only 5% daze. But yeah, there's a bunch of daze chance on the tree over here, and if you can get that, then your fissures will start dazing stuff automatically, and you don't actually need to Wind Blast before you use Vaulting Impact to get that extra daze, broken stance stuff and the extra damage versus dazed. So that's kind of nice. Just good quality of life. For our last support, I think probably one of the better supports is Momentum, which is 40% more damage if you travel 2 meters during a single use of the skill. And obviously, since we're like jumping around a bunch, you are pretty easily able to travel with it. Heavy Swing is pretty good. Heft is decent as well. So yeah, there's a bunch of options. You could just do like close combat or something. There's a bunch of good options. So I'm not quite sure what's optimal yet, but I'll be playing around with that. Styrene Palm I don't really use very much. I used it a bit when leveling, but we just have like some random sports on there. Wind Blast is important. We have Stun 2. You could go Stun 3, which gives you, I think it's like 300% more stun buildup, but 50% less damage. So it works out to like 150% more stun buildup if you only care about the stun effect, which is actually pretty good for Wind Blast. But I ended up swapping back to stun 2 because I wanted to use the Impale in order to make our Vaulting Impact hit a little harder. So, yeah. So, other than that, we have Heft, and then Heavy Swing, and then probably last one would be Brutality. Probably, yeah, like Brutality 3, I think, is like 30% more Fizz damage. Because Stun you deal more stun buildup from pure Fizz damage, as well as from melee damage. So, yeah, you kind of want to scale mostly Fizz damage. And then both of our War Cries are using Tireless and Raging Cry, so chance to not count for attacks to not count as empowered, and then Raging Cry just grants you a bunch of rage every time you War Cry. And then Seismic Cry also have Stun 3 on there, because we use this to stun enemies. It doesn't usually matter to have that on there, just because it automatically stuns primed enemies, so... or you can just use it after they're already stunned, and you get the extra effect. So yeah, that's... They got rid of a bunch of the Warcry supports. Like, Premeditation doesn't exist anymore, so you can't just get free 15% more damage. You can't get you can't use the one that sacrifices Rage to get more damage to the power attacks. That one doesn't exist either anymore. So, yeah, you're kind of limited in options on the Warcry stuff. Ancestral Cry, I honestly haven't fully, like, tried to figure out the most optimal setup here yet. Currently have Fire Exposure on there because it fully converts Fizz damage to fire with boosted attacks, and then it makes all your slams boosted. So, and then this just inflicts exposure on igniting enemies, so that helps a little bit with the, because I don't have any Fire Pen currently. And then Jagged Ground makes aftershocks caused by supportive skills create Jagged Ground, and this makes your Volcanic Steps slam, and then since they're slams, they're going to cause aftershocks because of Earthbreaker, so that's going to just create a bunch of Jagged Ground. And then Close Combat, I don't know if it even does anything really, but this thing does technically count as an attack, as well as like every other thing in the game. So yeah, I'm sure there's some crazy stuff you can do with Ancestral Cry. Like, this skill seems like it has a lot of tech with it, but I haven't fully figured it out yet, so I will let you know if I figure out anything cool. And then just Scavenger's Plating with extra duration, +1 level, Overwhelming Presence with precision, and then Herald of Ash with some AoE. And that's it. Pretty much that is the build. As far as leveling goes, I basically leveled with this build from Act 1. Raider support you get pretty early on, and I think it's a tier 2, I want to say. I don't think you get a tier 1, I think it's tier 2. But you do get Vaulting Impact, like, in Act 1. And then also Wind Blast. So you can start doing that combo really early, and it just felt good with the extra damage versus Daze. Like, during the campaign, it felt like pretty solid damage. Especially because Warrior Start has so much increased melee damage here, so you kind of, like, you just get a bunch of damage early on, and it feels pretty good to level with. The other thing is that this staff exists, which is a level 28 staff, so that's like, you know, midway through Act 2. And this staff will last you all the way till, like, level 60. Like, and you'll be fine damage-wise. I use this thing forever. It also dazes on hit, which is really nice, because it also just, like, triggers daze from your fissures. And then you get extra damage for just heavy stun, so this thing is just, like, incredibly good for leveling this build. And it kind of just makes the whole thing a breeze, so that's kind of what I did to level. I also got lucky and found these, which drop Shocked Ground while you're moving. And since you're kind of, like, jumping over enemies, it's just going to drop Shocked Ground, like, when you jump over them, and just shock everything. So it's pretty nice. That was very smooth, easy leveling. So yeah, that's the build. I will keep updating you as I progress. So thanks for watching. and I hope your league starts are going well. See you next time.